Radio 4.
It's PM at 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve. And with better news from the doctors, this is Nicholas Woolley with today's PM reports. Among them, a roundup of travellers' fortunes up and down the country. Why the family and friends of George Davis are demonstrating outside Scotland Yard. The man who knew the jackal. The hunt for the killers of the CIA's boss in Athens, and the security precautions facing pilgrims in Israel. The life of a chorister as he prepares for the big day. And the tramps who came in from the cold. But first, for a look at the latest news, Colin Doran.
The Bank of England is cutting its minimum lending rate for the third time in 2 months. It's down by 1/4% to 11.25%. It could mean that private borrowing will be a little cheaper in the new year. The Post Office say that the number of letters and parcels posted this month is 17% below last year's level because of the rise in postal rates. A brighter note, though, they say all Christmas mail posted by the recommended dates will be delivered by today. A youth of 17 from County Down has been remanded in custody at Marylebone Magistrates Court, accused of causing the explosion at a pub in Kilburn in northwest London on Saturday night. He and 3 other men are charged with conspiring to cause explosions. At a magistrates' court in South London, the 4 men charged in connection with the Balcombe Street siege were remanded for another 6 days. In Angola, an attempt to end the fighting from one of the liberation movements involved, the UNITA faction are proposing an immediate ceasefire to be enforced by the Organization of African Unity. The Saudi Arabian oil minister, Sheikh Yamani, has made it plain that although the OPEC terrorist operation ended without bloodshed, it was a close thing. He said the gang were determined to kill him, but the Algerian authorities talked them out of it.
Thank you, Colin. Hopes rose last night when junior hospital doctors' leaders recommended that they should end their industrial action against Mrs. Castle, subject to the approval of the separate regions. Today, John Parry and colleagues up and down the country have been finding out what the situation in hospitals is likely to be over the holiday.
Whatever the junior hospital doctors' leaders may have recommended yesterday, there's by no means universal acceptance of their recommendation up and down the country. And in Barbara Castle's own constituency of Blackburn, they've given the thumbs down, as Alan Muirhead of Radio Blackburn told me.
At lunchtime today, 70 junior hospital doctors decided to reject the call from their leaders to suspend industrial action. A spokesman for the Blackburn doctors, Dr. John Turry, told me they'd previously been given full details of any negotiations or discussions when they were asked to take decisions. This time, he said, they'd only had verbal messages and a rough outline of the recommendations. Dr. Turry said he and his colleagues remain sceptical. They just do not trust the Department of Health, he declared, and until everything is written down in black and white, emergency services only will be treated in the Blackburn area, although on a round-the-clock basis. Doctors in Preston haven't yet met to consider the latest recommendation, and in Burnley, 60 junior doctors will decide what to do when they do get more details from their negotiators. Meanwhile, they too are dealing only with emergency cases.
In the West Country, the situation is just as uncertain, as Mike Whitmarsh from BBC Plymouth discovered.
It was here in the city that junior doctors first went on strike 2 months ago, and there's still no sign of a weakening in their resolve to continue industrial action. Juniors in the city hospitals are working a 56-hour week, which has kept the service running, but has meant a big reduction in routine treatment. So, over the Christmas period, the Lockyer Street Hospital will remain closed, but emergency cases will be treated normally. The casualty department at Plymouth General Hospital serves a wide area of Devon and Cornwall. The nearest alternative unit is at Truro, nearly 50 miles away, and juniors agreed that lives would be put in danger if Plymouth closed down. Meanwhile, emergency services are being maintained all over the region. Although if past performance is anything to go by, the Plymouth doctors may well decide to continue their action next week and beyond until their contract position is clarified.
In most areas, though, ambulance drivers are keeping their fingers crossed in the hope that many of the casualty departments which have closed or restricted their opening hours during the dispute would return to a semblance of normality over the holiday. In London, at King's College Hospital, junior doctors will resume normal working. Northampton and Kettering areas will suspend their action, but in Ipswich they're unlikely to return to normal working until next week. In the northwest, the situation is uncertain with the militant doctors there. But in Birmingham, the situation seems to be The situation seems to be returning to normal, as Tony Francis of BBC Birmingham reports.
Junior doctors at one big hospital, Dudley Road, have just voted to end their industrial action, so they'll be back in action tomorrow. And 9 hospitals in Dudley, Halesowen and Stourbridge in the Black Country will be back on Boxing Day. There seems to be nothing to stop other hospitals following suit, but that decision will be taken by the individual hospitals. It means meetings will have to be called and new rotas worked out before services are resumed. There's no indication yet when those meetings will be held. In the meantime, several hospitals in Birmingham, Coventry and the Black Country are operating their accident departments in rotation. The Regional Health Authority has given an assurance that all emergencies will be dealt with nevertheless, but surgeons have made an appeal to people with minor ailments to stay away from hospital over Christmas. They say too many people with trivial problems are cluttering up the casualty departments when they could and should go to their family doctors. The Birmingham Accident Hospital say this affects them particularly. They expect to be very heavily committed, especially with the increased number of road accidents at this time of year. So the message from them is, please don't overload us. If you've got a Brazil nut stuck in your throat or you stub your toe hanging up the Christmas stocking, please go to your GP first.
That report by John Parry and colleagues. The lucky ones got away on holiday last night or this morning, but for many people the travelling is just about to begin. Rosalind Morris has been investigating the prospects.
Public transport won't take you very far this Christmas. In fact, there'll be no public transport.